I'm not entirely sure. We've come far. We've come far. I'm going to be reading Twilight for the first time, and to keep this a completely unadulterated experience, I've not watched the films. I know very little chat about Twilight apart from sparkly vampires, and I think the main character is a bit moody. That is all the information I have about Twilight. But thank you. Is it a thank you? I don't even know. To the Glampers over on my coffee membership. If they're in the Discord, they can dictate a book for me to read. So I got this. Who was forcing you to do this? Paid members. See, you gotta give and take. How long will you read? I'm gonna do chapter one. And then hopefully I'll do one a day around this time. For the memes and for the peeps. I feel the exact same. This is going to be a very interesting experience. I don't even know where this apple comes in. I assume she eats it and becomes a vampire. That's all I know about. This is all I know about Twilight. This is, just to let everyone know, a little bit like Alex Days reads Twilight, but unlike him, I'm not going to become a nonce in a few years' time. We're going to go for it. Okay. So 24. Luckily for you people, do you know what? I'm going to give you the preface for free. Preface for free. Let's see how we start off Twilight. I literally know nothing about it, but you know what they say? A book that you don't know is a good book. So this might be a 10 out of 10. This could be my War and Peace. My lord. Preface. I'd never given much thought to how I would die. Stop it. I never thought how much. I've never given much thought to how I would die, though I had reasons enough in the last few months. But even if I had, I would have not imagined it like this. Ooh, we have a bit of suspense. We have ominous, like, oh, wait, but this is the preface. So this is before it all happened. Let's just go with it. So this has happened. This is the path. This is stupid already. I stared without breathing across the long room into the dark eyes of the hunter, and he looked pleasantly back at me. I can imagine just like puffed out cheeks, like, and the hunter's there like, doodles, I'll be grand. Surely it was a good way to die in the place of someone else, someone I loved, noble even, as Pistokomi, and that ought to count for something. There you go. I knew that if I'd never gone to Forks, I wouldn't be facing death now, but terrified as I was, I couldn't bring myself to regret the decision. When life offers you a dream so far beyond your expectations, it's not reasonable to grieve when it comes to an end. The hunter smiled in a friendly way as he sauntered forward to kill me. Just like this. This is oh. Art. I'm doing art. I'm doing what the people wanted. No. We only read good literature here. Chapter 1. That was a little fun preface, which was, does that count as a preface? Like, oh, everything's going to happen. She's going to die at the end. There's an apple, and I think the apple's going to come into it. First sight. Sorry. This is an Audible production. Chapter 1. First sight. My mother drove me to the airport with the windows rolled down. It was hot. It was 75 degrees in Phoenix. The sky a perfect cloudless blue. Fahrenheit, so we're in America. Because if it was 75 degrees Celsius, her skin would be boiling. And also, you could tell it's going to be stupid because they're using Fahrenheit. You're welcome. I was wearing my favourite shirt, sleeveless, white eyelet lace. I was wearing it as a farewell gesture. My carry-on item was a parka, in case you got cold. It's 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Wonderful. In the Olympic Peninsula of northwest Washington state, a small town named Forks exists under the near constant cover of clouds. It rains on this inconsequential town more than any other place in the United States of America. It was from this town and its gloomy, omnipresent shade that my mother escaped with me when I was only a few months old. It was in this town that I'd been compelled to spend a month every summer until I was 14. That was the year I finally put my foot down. These past 3 summers, my dad, Charlie, vacationed with me in California for 2 weeks instead. Yeah, she hit 14. She was like, enough is enough. And if Lucy Ellman who speak, enough is enough. It was to Fork that I now exiled myself. Bit strong. What is the character's name? Isabella. She's going to exile herself. An action that I took with great horror. I detested Forks. I just like that as a standalone. If you read that out of context, this could be some great cutlery criticism. I loved Phoenix because you wouldn't eat an apple with a fork. No. I loved Phoenix. I loved the sun and the blistering heat. I loved the vigorous, sprawling city. That's a Jailer for Barn bookcase with nowhere. That's grand. Phoenix, Arizona. Is that in Arizona? I can't. My geography is not great. Oh, what's this? You have to read an American accent. Oh no. I'm gonna have to go deep south. Bella, my mum said to me the last 1,000 times before I got on the plane, you don't have to do this. My mum looks like me, except with short hair and lifelines. Oh, she emphasizes the moody that she's had enough. She's gonna exile herself. I felt a spasm of panic as I stared at her wide, childlike eyes. How could I leave my loving, erratic, hairline mother to fend for herself? Of course, she had Phil now, and so the bills would possibly get paid. There would be food in the refrigerator, gas in her car, and someone to call when she got lost. But still, Patrick Palm remembers. I want to go. I lied. I've always been a bad liar. So let's do that as if she was a bad liar. Oh, I want to go. Putting her foot down at 14. But I'd been saying this lie so frequently lately that it sounded almost convincing. Tell Charlie I said hi. I will. I'll see you soon, she insisted. You can come home whenever you want. I'll come right back as soon as you need me. Good parenting 101. Let your kid come back into the house. That's good, that is. But I could see the sacrifice in her eyes behind the promise. Don't worry about me, I urged. It'll be great. I love you, Mom. Is she lying then? Ooh, character development. Yes. She hugged me tightly for a minute. We're not doing the American accent for a moment. She hugged me tightly for a moment, and then I got on the plane. She was gone. It's great. It was a 4-hour flight from Phoenix to Seattle, another hour in a small plane up to Port Angeles, and then an hour drive back down to Forks. Flying doesn't, I don't know why Forks does make me laugh so much, I do apologize. Flying doesn't bother me. The hour in the car with Charlie, though, was a little bit worried about that. Charlie had been really fairly nice about the whole thing. He seemed genuinely pleased that I was coming to live with him for the first time with any degree of permanence. He'd already gotten me registered for high school, and I was going to help me get a car. How old's high school then? How old's high school? This is like, she said she's 14. She's like 15, 16. Now she's driving. Yeah, Americans drive really early though, don't they? We'll find out. I think Stephanie May has. She's thought about this. It was sure to be awkward with Charlie. Neither of us was what anyone would call verbose. I didn't know what there was to say regardless. I knew he was more than a little confused by my decision. Like my mother before me, I hadn't made a secret of my distaste for forks. This is a real place. This is a real place called Forks, and they decided, like, yeah, this is great. A secret distaste for forks. That's what it should be called. I'd buy it. I have bought it. When I landed in Port Angeles, it was raining. I didn't see it as an omen, just unavoidable. I already said my goodbyes to the sun. Pathetic fallacy. That's sad, that is. That's a good poetic device there, people. Charlie was waiting for me with the cruiser. This I was expecting too. Charlie is Police Chief Swan to the good people of Forks. Charlie is Police Chief... Oh, sorry. My primary motivation behind buying a car, despite the scarcity of my funds, was that I refused to be driven around town in a car with red and blue lights on top. Nothing slows down traffic like a cop. It's true. That is a fact. Well done. Charlie gave me an awkward one-armed hug when I stumbled my way off the plane. Oh, do you remember that? Give me that Christian sad hug. That Christian sad hug. That's grand. That's a top tier meme. It's good to see you, Bells, he said, smiling as he automatically caught and steadied me. You haven't changed much. How's Renee? Mum's fine. It's good to see you too, Dad. I wasn't allowed to call him Charlie to his face. Gee, she might be moody, but she's got standards. I only had a few bags. Most of my Arizona clothes were too permeable for Washington. My mum and Too permeable? Get over. My mum and I had pulled... That just sounds like it's just made of sponge. Which might be an American trend. My mum and I had pooled our resources to supplement my winter clothes, but it was still scanty. Scanty? Ooh, that's a fun word. Scanty. It all fit easily into the trunk of the cruiser. I found a good car for you. Really cheap, he announced when we were strapped in. What kind of car? I was suspicious of the way he said, good car for you. Ooh, tone. Just as opposed to good car. Well, it's a truck, actually. A Chevy. A Chevy Chase. He's American, I think. Where did you find it? On the road? Sorry, this isn't Jack Kerouac's. Where did you find it? Do you remember Billy Black down in Lapush? Lapush is the tiny Indian reservation on the coast. No. Conversation killer. He used to go fishing with us during the summer, Charlie prompted. Well, that would explain why I didn't remember him. I do a good job of blocking painful, unnecessary things from my memory. Now that he's just explaining. Just explaining. He's in a wheelchair now, Charlie continued when I didn't respond. So he can't drive anymore. I mean, I don't know why we had to put that on. I was like, I don't know why we had to put that information in. And he offered to sell me the truck cheap. What year is it? I could see from his change of expression that this was the question he was hoping I wouldn't ask. It's 2002. Well, Billy's done a lot of work on the engine. It's only a few years old, really. I hope he didn't think so little to me to believe that I would give up that easily. Well, when did he buy it? Well, if you bought the car, you'd get the documents. You get the documents, Bella. Then you can see, because I don't know how you do in America. We get our VC8s, and all the information comes across from you don't need to worry about this. If your dad's bought the car, he should have the correct documentation. Otherwise, of course he's a cop. He hasn't. Bella, stop worrying about the car. Carmet. What? Chevy Chase. It's not Chevy, is it? If it is, Chevy. I'm in my Chevy. Look at me, boys. Cruising in my Chevy. How old is it? I got the documentation in the trunk. You're welcome. Did he buy it new? Well, no. I think it was new in the early 60s or late 50s at the earliest, he admitted sheepishly. Dad. She was going to say Charlie then, but she has morals. Remember that, people. I don't really know anything about cars. I wouldn't be able to fix it if anything went wrong. I couldn't afford a mechanic. Most people can't. What's this? Chevy. Oh, because the Chevy was Levy, but the Levy was dry. But don't worry, peeps, because Billy Black, he got it all fixed. Don't worry about the Chevy to the Levy if the Levy was dry. He's got that sorted. A Chevy. Is it Chevy Chase? That would be Sean Connery playing Chevy Chase. Chevy Chase. Where were we? Dad, I don't really know anything about cars. I wouldn't be able to fix it if anything went wrong, and I couldn't afford a mechanic, as can most people. Oh, really, Bella? The thing runs great. They don't build them like that anymore. The thing. I thought to myself, it had possibilities. As a nickname at the very least. It'll be smart. Dad just bought you a car, mate. Be a bit grateful. Do you want to walk? Do you want shoes? You got shoes. No, they were permeable because they had holes in them because you wear sponges for clothes in silly Arizona. All those Arizonians wearing sponges. Oh, don't. How cheap is cheap? After all, that was the part I couldn't compromise on. You have no funds, Bella. Do you know what? This is a life lesson in chapter 1 from Stephanie Meyer. Beggars can't be choosers. You can't be like, oh, I want a car because I don't want to drive around my dad in his cop car. And then he goes, well, I got you a car. And you go, well, I'd rather not. That's not the way. No. Stop in the name of the law. That's what Charlie would say. Well, honey, I kind of already bought it for you. I thought we already established that. I do apologize. As a homecoming gift. Oh, how nice. Charlie peeked sideways at me with a hopeful expression like this. We did. How do you be hopeful? What's hopeful? Like, wow, free. Look at that. Wow, not even an exclamation mark. Ungrateful swine, Isabella. You didn't need to do that, Dad. I was going to buy myself a car. With what funds? You just said you don't have it. If you can't afford a mechanic, are you affording a car? She hasn't thought. She's put her foot down, but she hasn't put her mind into gear. Don't worry. Don't you mind. I want you to be happy. He was looking ahead at the road when he said this because he's driving. Well, of course he's going to. He's not going to be like this, is he? Whoa, look at my Chevy Chase. Chevy. Charlie wasn't uncomfortable with expressing the emotions out loud. I inherited that from him. I was looking straight ahead as I responded. That's really nice, Dad. Thanks. I really appreciate it. All full stops. No need to add that my being happy in Forks is an impossibility. Dun dun dun. Very moody. Why? I love like the sublime nature of like Bella is just a miserable sod. That's it. And it's gonna take like a vampire who's 600 probably years old. So they're always older than like 70. To come around, she'll be like, I'm finally happy. So she's never going to be happy. It's impossible. Nothing was good. He could have turned up with a Ferrari, and she'd be like, oh, it's too low to the ground. I can't get up all those. What's in Washington? Trees. Oh, it's up there, isn't it? That's really nice. That blah blah. She's impossibly. He didn't need to suffer along with me, and I never looked a free trunk in the mouth. It gets worse. Or engine. Oh. Never look a free trunk in the mouth or engine. Oh, well, now you're welcome, he mumbled, embarrassed by my thanks. Are these people going to get along? I don't think they are. We exchanged a few more comments on the weather, which was wet, and that was pretty much it for conversation. We stared out of the windows in silence. It was beautiful, of course. I couldn't deny that. Everything was green. The trees, I said it was trees. Their trunks covered it with moss, their branches hanging with a canopy of it. The ground was covered in ferns, and even the air filtered down greenly through the leaves. It was too green. Oh my God, what does she want? What does she want? An alien planet. Yeah, you hear that, Washington? Have it. Eventually, we made it to Charlie's. He still lived in a small 2-bedroom house that he bought with which he bought with my mother in the early days of their marriage. Those were the only kinds of days their marriage had. The early ones. Ooh. There, parked on the street in front of the house that never changed, was my new, well, it was new to me. What are you going to go with me for? I'm just reading the damn thing. It was new to me truck. It was a faded red color with big, rounded fenders and a bulbous cab. To my intense surprise, I loved it. Oh, a bit of freedom, bit of freedom, bit of independence. Not worried about the date now, are you? I didn't know if it would run, but I could see myself in it. Plus, it was kind of one of those solid iron affairs that never gets damaged. The kind you see at the scene of an accident, paint unscratched, surrounded by the pieces of a foreign car it had destroyed. Oh, someone's been listening to the Smiths. Wow, Dad, I love it. Thanks. Now my horrific day tomorrow would just be that much less dreadful. I wouldn't be faced with the choice of either walking 2 miles in the rain to school or accepting a ride by the Chief's cruiser. Well, I'm glad you like it, Charlie said gruffly. Sorry. I'm glad you like it, Charlie said gruffly, embarrassed again. It only took one trip to get all my stuff upstairs. I got the west bedroom that faced over the front yard. The room was familiar. It had belonged to me since I was born. The wooden floor, the light blue walls, the peaked ceilings. I don't know what a peaked ceiling is. The yellow lace curtains around the window. These were all a part of my childhood. The only changes Charlie ever made was switching the crib for a bed and adding a desk as I grew. The desk now held a second-hand computer with the phone line for the modem stapled along the floor to the nearest phone jack. This was a stipulation from my mother so that we could stay in touch easily. The rocking chair from my baby days was still in the corner. Oh, isn't that nice? Isn't it? She's not. You know what? Bella's not like other girls. Okay? She's just not. Just ungrateful. That's what I'm going to say. There was only one small bathroom at the top of the stairs, which I would have to share with Charlie. I was trying not to dwell too much on the fact. Oh, now she wants an ensuite. What is this? America, do you have two toilets? Don't be silly. You'll just share one. It's great. Also, you're not going to be sharing it like at the same time. So, like, your dad's going to need to poo, and you're like, well, there's only one seat, Dad. You know, shimmy up. That's not going to happen. Don't dwell on it too much, Bella. I've been in that situation. You wait your turn. And you just hope that it doesn't trickle down your legs. One of the best things about Charlie is that he doesn't hover. He walks like normal people. He left me alone to unpack and get settled, a feat that would have been altogether impossible for my mother. It was nice to be alone, not to have to smile and look pleased. Oh no, a relief to stare dejectedly out the window at the sheeting rain and just a few tears escape. Oh, it's like an Avril Lavigne. It's a good night. Trying to figure out this night. Won't you think you better take me somewhere new? I don't know who you are, but I'm in Forks, which I secretly despise. I mean, look, me and my wife, we've been together long enough. We've had two toilets in the past. One will do nicely. Gets free cart. Myth of the trees are too green. So what's it? Mate, I'm on this. You don't have actually placed the time of this. Oh, is this 2000? I actually don't know this. When did this come out? 2006. That's grand. Forks High School had a frightening total of only 3 toilets. No, it wasn't. It was 357. Now 58 students. That's me. There were more than 700 people. See, now that's a situation where one toilet, I'd be like, ooh, that's not great. I would start worrying then. 2 people, you're fine. There were more than 700 people in my junior class alone back home. All of the kids here had grown up together. Their grandparents had been toddlers together. I would be the new girl from the big city, a curiosity, a freak. Maybe if you smiled a bit. Maybe if I looked like a girl from Phoenix should, I would work this to my advantage. But physically, I'd never fit in anywhere. I should be tan, sporty, blonde, a volleyball player, that well-known Phoenix, Arizonan trait. But when people think volleyball, I go Phoenix, Arizona. Or cheerleader, perhaps. All the things that go with living in the Valley of the Sun. I actually don't know anything about Arizona. Have I been at them? Instead, I was ivory-skinned, without even the excuse of blue eyes or red hair, despite the constant sunshine. I had always been slender, but soft somehow, obviously not an athlete. I didn't have the necessary hand-eye coordination to play sports without humiliating myself, without harming both myself and anyone else who stood too close. When I finished putting my clothes in the old pine dresser, I took my bag of bathroom necessities and went to the communal bathroom to clean myself up after a day of travel. I looked at my face in the mirror and I brushed through my tangled, damp hair. Maybe it was the light, but I already looked sallower, unhealthy. Oh, I like the word sallow. I don't think I've read that word in ages. Sallow. Wonderful word. My skin could be pretty. It was very clear, almost translucent looking, like an onion. But it all depended on the colour. I had no colour here. Oops. Facing my pallid reflection in the mirror, I was forced to admit that I was lying to myself. It just wasn't physically that I'd never fit in. And if I couldn't find a niche, so we're in America, a niche in school with 3,000 people, well, what were my chances here? 3,000 people? Forks High School had a frightening total of 357 students. But there were more than 700 in my junior class alone back home. So where's the 3,000 come from? We have found a problem. If I could have ended a school with 3,000 people, what would my I'm thinking too far. I didn't relate well to people my age. Maybe the truth was that I didn't relate well to people, period. Even my mother, who I was closer to anyone else on the planet, was never in harmony with me, never on exactly the same page. Sometimes I wondered if I was seeing the same things through my eyes that the rest of the world was seeing through theirs. Maybe there was a glitch in my brain. But that didn't matter. All that matters was the effect, and tomorrow would just be the beginning. Yeah, sorry, no, I kind of stopped halfway through the sentence. So Stephanie Meyer, she can have that back. She's fine there. This is going to take me way longer than I thought. I'm not very good. Oh no! Oh, my ages! Why? I thought it was going to be half hour. I didn't sleep that well last night. Even after I was done crying, the constant whooshing of the rain and wind across the roof wouldn't fade into the background. I pulled the faded old quilt over my head and later added the pillow too. But I couldn't fall asleep until after midnight, when the rain finally settled into a quieter drizzle. Thick fog was all that I could see out of my window in the morning, and I could feel the claustrophobia creeping up on me. You could never see the sky here. It was like a cage. She's very like, I am. I don't know how I feel about that. Breakfast with Charlie was a quiet event. He wished me good luck at school, and I thanked him, knowing his hope was wasted. She's not fun, is she? Good luck tended to avoid me. Charlie left first, off to the police station. That was his wife and... Wait, I've reread that wrong. Charlie left first, off to the police station that was his wife and family. After he left, I sat in the old square oak table in one of the 3 unmatching chairs and examined his small kitchen, with its dark panelled walls, bright yellow cabinets, and white linoleum floor. Nothing was changed. My mother had painted the cabinets 18 years ago in an attempt to bring some sunshine into the house. Over the small fireplace in the adjoining handkerchief-sized family room was a row of pictures. First, a wedding picture of Charlie and my mum in Las Vegas. Then, one of the 3 of us in the hospital after I was born, taken by a helpful nurse, followed by the procession of my school pictures up to last year's. Those were embarrassing to look at. I would have to see what I could do to get Charlie to put them elsewhere, at least while I was living here. For it was impossible being in this house not to realize that Charlie had never gone over my mum, and that made me uncomfortable. Oh, I'm sorry that your dad loves your mum, bud. Jeez. Worst case scenarios could be happening here, but like you're really fixated on none of it. I didn't want to be early to school. but I couldn't stay in the house anymore. I donned my jacket, which had the feel of a biohazard suit. Well, that's interesting. And headed out into the rain. It was just drizzling still. Not enough to soak me through immediately, as I reached for the house key that was always hidden under the eaves by the door, locked up. The sloshing of my new waterproof boots was unnerving. I missed the normal crunch of gravel as I walked. I couldn't pause and admire the truck again as I wanted. I was in a hurry to get out of the misty wet that swirled around my head and clung to my hair under the hood. Inside the truck, it was nice and dry. Either Billy or Charlie had obviously cleaned it up, but the tan upholstered seats still faintly smelt of tobacco, gasoline, and peppermint. The engine started quickly, to my relief, but loudly roaring to life and then idling at top volume. Well, a truck this old is bound to have a flaw. The antique radio worked, a plus that I hadn't expected. All of it. You're welcome. Antique radio worked. Oh, wow. Finding the school wasn't difficult, though I'd never been there before. The school was, like most other things, just off the highway. It was not obvious that it was a school, only the sign which declared it to be Forks High School that made me stop. It looked like a collection of matching houses built with maroon-coloured bricks. There were so many trees and shrubs that I couldn't see its size at first. Where was the feel of an institution? I wish I was like more pressed in school, says Bella. Where was the feel of institution? I wondered nostalgically. Interesting. Where were the chain link fences, the metal detectors? I parked in front of the first building, which had a small sign over the door reading front office. No one else was parked there, so I was sure that it was off limits, but I decided I would get directions inside instead of circling around in the rain like an idiot. I stepped unwillingly out of the toasty truck cab and walked down a little stone path linked with dark hedges. I took a deep breath before opening the door. Inside, it was brightly lit and warmer than I had hoped. The office was small, a little waiting area with padded folded chairs, orange-flecked commercial carpet, notices and awards cluttering the walls, a big clock ticking loudly. Plants grew everywhere in large plastic pots as if there wasn't enough greenery outside. The room was cut in half by a long counter, cluttered with wire baskets full of papers and brightly coloured flyers taped to its front. There were 3 desks behind the counter, one of which was manned by a large red-haired woman wearing glasses. She was wearing a purple t-shirt, which immediately made me feel overdressed. How? She wore a purple t-shirt and you're like, oh, I didn't realize it was smart casual in this place. What is she wearing? The red-haired woman looked up. Can I help you? I'm Isabella Swan, I informed her, and saw the immediate awareness light in her eyes. I was expecting a topic of gossip, no doubt. Daughter of the chief's flighty ex-wife, come home at last. If your mother could hear you, Bella. Of course, she said. She dug out a precariously stacked pile of documents on her desk until she found the one that she was looking for. I have your schedule right here and a map of the school. She brought several sheets to the counter to show me. She went through my classes with me, highlighted the best route to each on the map, and gave me a slip to have each teacher sign, which I was to bring back at the end of the day. She smiled at me and hoped, like Charlie, that I would like it here in Forks. I smiled back as convincingly as I could. Look, the woman's just giving you a hand. Like, she doesn't care. She's on reception, Bella. You know, she's got bigger things to deal with, and just be nicer. When I went back out to my truck, other students were starting to arrive. I drove around the school, following the line of traffic. I was glad to see that most of the cars were older, like mine, nothing flashy. At home, I'd lived in one of the few lower income neighborhoods that were included in the Paradise Valley district. It was a common thing to see a new Mercedes or Porsche in the student lot. The nicest car here was a shiny Volvo. Ooh. And it stood out. Still, I cut the engine as soon as I was in a spot so that the thunderous volume didn't draw attention to me. I looked at the map in the truck, trying to memorize it now. Hopefully, I wouldn't have to walk around with it stuck in the front of my nose all day. I stuffed everything in my bag, slung the strap over my shoulder, and sucked in a huge breath. I can do this, I lied to myself briefly. No one was going to bite me. Oh, no. Foreshadowing has occurred. I finally exhaled, stepped out of the truck. I kept my face pulled back into my hood as I walked into the sidewalk, crowded with teenagers. My plain black jacket didn't stand out, I noticed with relief. Once I got around the cafeteria, building 3 was easy. Once I got around the cafeteria, building 3 was easy to spot. A large black 3 was painted on the white square of the east corner. I don't know why I laughed. It's not even that funny. I was thinking of the meme E. And I just said it very similar to 3. I'm sorry. I felt my breathing gradually creeping towards hyperventilation as I approached the door. I tried holding my breath as I followed 2 unisex raincoats through the door. The classroom was small. The people in front of me stopped just inside the door to hang up their coats on the long row of hooks. I copied them. They were 2 girls, one a porcelain-coloured blonde, the other also pale with light brown hair. At least my skin wouldn't be a standout here. I took the slip up to the teacher, a tall, balding man whose desk had a nameplate identifying him as Mr. Mason. He gawked at me when he saw my name. Not an encouraging response, and of course I flushed tomato red. But at least he sent me to an empty desk at the back without introducing me to the class. It was harder for my new classmates to stare at me at the back, but somehow they managed. I kept my eyes down on the reading list the teacher had given me. It was fairly basic. Bronte, easy. Shakespeare, hardly knew, yeah. Chaucer, more like no sir. And Faulkner. I have no thoughts on Faulkner. I'd already read everything. Well, that was comforting and boring. Okay, you're going to get top marks then. Cocky. I wondered if my mum would send me my folder of old essays, or if she'd think that was cheating. I went through the different arguments with her in my head while the teacher droned on. As the bell rang, a nasal buzzing sound. It's probably me. I'm a gangly boy with skin problems and black hair and hair black as an oil slick. Bet she won't. She says she won't, but I bet she will. Swing your partner round and round. I can't have the word oil slick. Leaned across the aisle to talk to me. You're Isabella Swan, aren't you? He looked like the overly helpful chess club type. Is that a stereotype? Obviously, we're living in a post-Queen's Gambit world, but that feels a bit harsh. Bella, I corrected. Everyone within a 3-seat radius turned and looked at me. Where's your next class? He asked. Checked my bag. Government with Jefferson in Building 6. There was nowhere to look without meeting curious eyes. I'm heading over towards Building 4. I could show you the way. He's just being nice. He's just being nice. I'm Eric, he added. I smiled tentatively. Thanks. You're the one who can't find anywhere. I mean, you found the school, okay, so maybe Building 6 you wouldn't struggle with. We got our jackets and headed out into the rain, which we had picked up. That's good, because if you had left them on the ground, you wouldn't be putting them on. We'd be slugging it across. I was hoping I wasn't going to get paranoid. So this is a lot different than Phoenix, huh? He asked. Very. Doesn't rain much there, does it? 3 or 4 times a year? Wow, what must that be like, he wondered. Sunny? Whoa, Eric is really regretting this, I promise you. You don't look very tan. My mother is part albino. He studied my face apprehensively. I sighed. Don't know if she did the face, but It looked like clouds and a sense of humor. It looked like clouds and a sense of humor didn't mix. A few months of this, and I've forgotten how to use sarcasm. It's because you're being rude. Well, good luck, he said, and as he touched the handle, maybe we'll have some other classes together. He sounded hopeful. They all do, don't they? I smiled at him vaguely and went inside. How's this vague smile? Wow. There was Empress Matilda in this. Charlotte. What? Imagine that. After 2 classes, I started to recognize several of the faces in each class. There was always someone braver than the others who would introduce themselves and ask me questions about how I was liking forks. I tried to be diplomatic, but mostly I lied a lot. At least I never needed the map. Dora the Explorer, eat your heart out. One girl sat next to me in both Trig and Spanish, and she walked me to the cafeteria for lunch. She was tiny, several inches shorter than my 5 feet 4 inches, but her wildly curly dark hair made up a lot of difference between my heights. How tall is this girl's hair? Several inches. It is that big. That's grand. That's great. That's strong. I'm just imagining her. Remember Paul off Tekken? And he had the like hair. That's what I imagine this girl has. Because May hasn't told me, and I don't believe the author is the authorial figure here. I couldn't remember her name, so I smiled and nodded as she prattled about teachers and classes. I didn't try to keep up. We sat at the end of the full table with several of her friends, who she introduced to me. I forgot all their names as soon as she spoke to them. Gotta listen. Attentive. They seemed impressed by her bravery in speaking to me. The boy from English, Eric, waved at me from across the room. It was there, sitting in the lunchroom, trying to make conversation with several curious strangers, that I saw them first. They were sitting in the corner of the cafeteria, as far away as possible in the long room. There were 5 of them. They were the long room from the prologue. Foreshadowing. They weren't gawking at me, unlike most of the other students, so it was safe to stare at them without fearing meeting an excessively interested pair of eyes. Wow, that's a sentence. But it was none of those things that caught and held my attention. They didn't look anything alike. Of the 3 boys, one was big. Wait, well, they didn't look alike. Well, they're not all related, I would imagine. One of the boys was big, muscled like a serious weightlifter with dark curly hair. Another was taller, leaner, but still muscular, and honey blonde. The last was lanky, less bulky, with untiny bronze-coloured hair. He was more boyish than the others, who looked like they could be in college or even teachers here rather than students. The girls were opposites. The tall one was statuesque. She had a beautiful figure, the kind you saw on the cover of the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue, the kind that made every girl around her take the hit of her self-esteem just by being in the same room. Her hair was golden, gently waving into the middle of her back. The short girl was pixie-like, thin in the extreme with small features. Her hair was a deep black, cropped short and pointing in every direction. And yet they were all exactly alike. Every one of them was chalky pale, the palest of all the students living. Are these goths? Am I missing a part? Sorry. It's just a group of goths in the corner. And yet they were all exactly alike. Every one of them was chalky pale, the palest of all the students living in this sunless town, paler than me, the albino. They had all very dark eyes, despite the range and hair tone. They also had dark shadows under those eyes, purplish, bruised-like shadows, as if they were all suffering from sleepless nights or almost done recovering from a broken nose. Though their noses, all their features were straight, perfect, angular. But all this is not why I couldn't look away. I stared because of their faces, so different, so similar, were all devastatingly, inhumanely beautiful. Are these the vampires? Have I clocked it? I can't tell if these are just goths or vampires. And sometimes I can't do that in real life. They were faces you'd never expect to see, perhaps on an airbrushed pages of a fashion magazine. You've already covered that. Or painted by an old master. You already said one was angel, statuesque. Come on, move on, move on. It was hard to decide who was the most beautiful. Maybe the perfect blonde girl, maybe the blonde-haired boy. That paragraph, cut. You didn't need that. They were all looking away from each other, away from all the other students, away from anything in particular as far as I could tell. As I watched, the small girl rose with her tray. Unopened soda, unbitten apple. Ooh. I walked away with a quick, graceful lope that belonged on a runway. I watched, amazed at her lithe dancer's step, till she dumped her tray and glided through the back door faster than I would have thought possible. She's sashaying away. My eyes darted back to the others who sat unchanged. Who are they? I asked the girl from my Spanish class, whose name I had forgotten. As she looked up to see who I meant, though already knowing, probably from my tone, suddenly he looked at her, the thinner one, the boyish one, the youngest perhaps. He looked at my neighbour for just a fraction of a second, and then his dark eyes flickered to mine. Jesus. He looked away quickly, more quickly than I could. It's not a race. Though in a flush of embarrassment, I dropped my eyes at one. How quick is this happening? Like who? Just like that. That's way too. This is ridiculous. My neighbour giggled in embarrassment, looking at the table like I did. That's Edward and Emma Cullen. I knew it. I knew it. I said they were vampires, or they could be ghosts. I didn't know there was multiple. This is a fun instance. That's Edward and Emma Cullen, and Rosalie, and Jasper Hale. Oh, Jasper's a proper vampire name there. I wouldn't want to. Could you imagine if Dracula was just called Jasper? Oh, yeah, he'd be a vicious boy. The one who left was Alice Cullen. They all live together with Dr. Cullen and his wife. She said this under her breath. And his wife. I glanced sideways at the beautiful boy who was looking at his tray now, picking a bagel to pieces with his long, pale finger. Oh, that's dirty. His mouth was moving very quickly, his perfect lips barely opening. The other three still looked away, and yet I felt he was speaking quietly to them. Strange, unpopular names, I thought. The kind of names grandparents had. But maybe that was in vogue here. Small town names. Is this what teenagers like? It's a lot of like, no, he's really good looking. Like, I'm letting you know he's really attractive. Yeah, in for a penny, in for a pound, innit? They are very nice looking. I struggled with the conspicuous understatement. Yes, Jessica agreed with another giggle. They're all together, though. Emmett and Rosalie and Jasper and Alice, I mean, they live together. Her voice held all the shock and condemnation of a small town. I thought critically, oh my lord, what is this? Oh, but if I was being honest, I had to admit that even in Phoenix, it would cause gossip. Which ones are the Cullens, I asked. They don't look related. Oh, they're not. Dr. Cullen is really young, in his 20s or early 30s. They're all adopted. The Hales are brothers and sisters, twins, the blondes, and they're foster children. They look a little old for foster children. Well, they are now. Okay. Jasper and Rosalie are both 18, but they have been with Mrs. Cullen since they were 8, and she's their aunt or something like that. That's really kind of nice for them to take care of all those kids like that when they were so young and everything. Oh, Bella somehow has a heart when there's an attractive bloke around the corner. Isn't that interesting? I guess so, Jessica admitted reluctantly, and I got the impression that she didn't like the doctor and his wife for some reason. With the glances that she was throwing at them, at their adopted children, I would presume the reason was jealousy. I think that Mrs. Cullen can't have any kids, though, she added, as if that lessened their kindness. Throughout all this conversation, my eyes flickered again and again to the table where the strange family sat. They continued to look at the walls and not eat. Have they always lived in Forks? I asked. Surely I would have noticed one of them on my summers here. No. Yeah, you don't like it now, do you? No, she said in a voice that implied that should be obvious, even to a new arrival like me. They just moved down 2 years ago from somewhere in Alaska. I felt a surge of pity and then relief, because that's what happens when people live in Alaska. You go, oh no, surely not. But when they move, you go, yes. What am I doing with my life? Pity because as beautiful as they were outsiders, clearly not accepted. Relief that I wasn't the only newcomer here. 2 years difference, very different. And certainly not the most interested by any standard. As I examined them, the youngest one of the Cullens, looked up and met my gaze, this time with evident curiosity in his expression. As I looked swiftly away, it seemed to me that his gaze held some kind of unmet expectation. Which one is the boy with the reddish-brown hair? I asked. I peeked at him from the corner of my eye, and he was still staring at me, but not gawking like the other students had done today. He had a slightly frustrated expression. I looked down again. You're literally staring at him picking a bagel. Like, what do you expect? Like, of course he's going to be like, what are you doing? That's Edward. I know that name. He's gorgeous. Of course, but don't waste your time. He doesn't date. Apparently, none of the girls here are good looking enough for him. She sniffed, a clear case of sour grapes. I wonder when he turned her down. Ooh, Bella's going to saunter over. She's going to snap him up. I bit my lip to hide my smile. Then I glanced at him again. His face was turned away, but I thought his cheek appeared lifted, as if he was smiling too. A few more minutes, the four of them left the table together. They were all noticeably graceful, even the big brawny one. It was unsettling to watch. The one named Edward didn't look at me again. Oh, Bella's sad. I mean, she's been sad all the way through this. Oh, no. I had been at the table with Jessica and her friends longer than I would have liked to have been sitting alone. I was anxious not to be late for my class on the first day. One of my new acquaintances, who considerably reminded me that her name was Angela, had biology 2 with me the next hour. Because it's this Angela. Angela's in the book. Would you believe it? And we walked to class together in silence. She was shy too. When we entered the classroom, I support this idea if you try. Let me live. Tatiana, thank you so much. What I like is that when people support me, it's just to be like, can you just do this like stupid thing like a little bit longer? Because no one else is clearly going to. And that's what I love about this community, is that it's all just sadists and masochists, and we love it. When we entered the classroom, Angela went to sit at the black-top lab table, exactly like the ones... Oh, Angela, too busy doing a PhD. Oh, priorities. I mean, I don't know if you've been doing PhD for 9 years. I don't know when did the films come out? As I walked down the aisle to introduce myself... In fact, all the tables were filled but one. Next to the center aisle, I recognized Edward Cullen by his unusual hair, sitting next to that. A single open seat. Oh my gosh, she's going to sit next to him. She's going to fall in love. As I walked down the aisle, I'm just trying to channel like my inner 14-year-old girl. And I think they're going to hold hands. As I walked down the aisle, there's a bit of imagery there, to introduce myself to the teacher. Oh, okay, this got a bit Lolita. Sorry about that. To get my slip signed, I watched him surreptitiously. Ooh, wonderful word. Mega's got some grand vocab throwing about here. Just as I passed, he suddenly went rigid in his seat. Not like that. Calm down, you ding-dongs. He stared at me again, meeting my eyes with a stranger's expression on his face. He was hostile, furious. I looked away, shocked, going red again. I stumbled over a book in the walkway. Why is it there? And had to catch myself on the edge of the table. The girl sitting there giggled. I'd noticed his eyes were black, coal black. What, you know me? You know a Welshman with coal. Oh, I'd be swooning. Take me off my feet, Cullen. I'd call him by his last name to keep it formal, you know. Keep him at bay. Mr. Banner signed my slip and handed me a book with no nonsense about introductions. I could tell we were going to get along. Of course, he had no choice but to send me to one of the open seats in the middle of the room. I kept my eyes down as I went to sit by him, bewildered by the antagonistic stare he'd given me. Oh, my Lord. I didn't look up as I set my book on the table and took my seat, but I saw his posture change from the corner of my eye. He was leaning away from me, sitting on the extreme edge of the chair. Yeah, he's hardcore cool. And averting his face like he smelt something bad. Inconspicuously, I sniffed my hair. It smelt of strawberries. The scent of my favourite shampoo. It'd be interesting if it wasn't the smell of the shampoo and Bella just rubbed strawberries in her hair. I prefer that. It smelled innocent. It seemed like an innocent enough odour. I let my hair fall over my right shoulder, making a dark curtain between us. I tried to pay attention to the teacher. This is grand. Unfortunately, the lecture was on cellular anatomy, something I already studied. I took notes carefully anyway, always looking down. I was looking outside the window doing a note. She's like, I know all of this. Bella, I think, is too big for her boots. There you go. The class seemed to drag on longer than others. Was it because the day had finally come to the close, or because I was waiting for his tight fist to loosen? It never did. He continued to sit so still, it looked like he wasn't breathing. What was wrong with him? Was this normal behavior? I questioned my judgment on Jessica's bitterness at lunch today. Maybe she was not as resentful as I'd thought. It couldn't have anything to do with me. He didn't know me from Eve. I peeked up at him one more time and regretted it. He was glaring down at me again, his black eyes full of revulsion. As I flinched away from him, shrinking against my chair, the phrase, "if looks could kill," suddenly ran through my mind. At that moment, the bell rang loudly, making me jump, and Edward Cullen was out of his seat. Fluidly, he rose. That's how I would rise when I was fluid. Viscously, I would rise. He was much taller than I thought, his back to me, and he was out the door before anyone else was out of their seat. I sat frozen in my seat, staring blankly at him. He was so mean, and it wasn't fair. I began to gather up my things slowly, trying to block the anger that filled me, for fear that my eyes would tear up. And for some reason, my temper was hardwired to my tear ducts, and I usually cried when I was angry. It was a humiliating tendency. "Aren't you Isabella Swan?" a male voice asked. I looked up to see a cute baby-faced boy. Mate, are all the boys like fit in forks? That's what I'm gathering at the moment. His pale blonde hair carefully gelled into orderly spikes. Yeah, this is from the 2000s. Smiling at me in a friendly way. He obviously didn't think I smelled bad. She was like, "Smell my hair, smells of strawberries." She rubs more into it. "Bella," I corrected him with a smile. "I'm Mike." "Hi, Mike. Do you need help finding your next class?" "I'm heading to the gym, actually. I think I can find it." "Well, that's my next class too." He seemed thrilled. There wasn't a big coincidence in this school. People are just trying to be nice to you, Bella. Stop being ungrateful. We walked to class together. He was a chatterer. Yeah, because you're a barrel of laughs, aren't you? He supplied most of the conversation, which made it easy for me. He lived in California till he was 10, so he knew how I felt about the sun. It turned out he was in my English class also. He was also the nicest person I'd met today. Oh, hold up, Eric. Eric came out of his way. Come on, give Eric his due. Give Eric his due. As we were entering the gym, he asked, "So, did you stab Edward Cullen with a pencil or what? Never seen him act like that. I think I might have missed a paragraph, and I think something might have happened in that paragraph. She probably stabbed him accidentally, and that's why he had his face." But we make mistakes. I cringe. So I wasn't the only one who had noticed, and apparently that wasn't Edward Cullen's usual behavior. I decided to play dumb. Was that the boy standing next to me in biology? I asked artlessly. Ooh, man, your adverbs, man. Yes, he said. It looked like he was in pain or something. I don't know. I never spoke to him. He's a weird guy. Mike lingered by me instead of headed to the dressing room. If I was lucky enough to sit by you, I would have talked to you. This isn't his first rodeo, is it? Good old Mike. I smiled at him before walking through the girls' locker room. He was friendly and clearly admiring, but it wasn't enough to ease my irritation. The gym teacher, Coach Clapp, found me a uniform but didn't make me dress down for today's class. At home, only 2 years of PE were required. Here, PE was mandatory for all 4 years. Forks was literally my personal hell on earth. Mate, not even Mike could do. He couldn't lose the. He'll realize the Bella's a bit of a moaner. The Mona the Vampire. Oh my god, it's all clicking in. Finally, the bell rang at last. I walked slowly to the office and returned my paperwork. The rain had drifted away, but the wind was strong and cold out. I wrapped my arms around myself. When I walked into the warm office, I almost turned around and walked back out. Why? Edward Cullen stood at the front desk in front of me. I recognized again that tousled bronze hair. Oh, he's so dreamy. He didn't appear to notice the sound of my entrance. I stood pressed against the back wall, waiting for the receptionist to be free. He was arguing with her in a low, attractive voice. I quickly picked up the gist of the argument. He was trying to trade from 6th hour biology to another time, any other time. Oh, I couldn't believe it, that this was about me. It had to be something else. Something had happened before I entered that biology room. The look on his face must have been about another aggravation entirely. It was impossible that a stranger could take a sudden, intense dislike to me. No one likes you. No, you have to look inwards, Bella. You have to look inwards. The door opened again, and the cold wind suddenly gusted through the room, rustling the papers of the desk, swirling my hair around her face, which smelled of strawberries. The girl who came in merely stepped to the desk, placed a note on the wire basket, and walked out again. But Edward's Cullen back stiffened as he turned slowly to glare at me. His face was absurdly handsome. Oh my god, you can't even, we know. With piercing, hate-filled eyes. For an instant, I felt a thrill of genuine fear raising the hair on my arms, which do not smell of strawberries, I would imagine. The look only lasted a second, but it chilled me more than a freezing wind. He turned back to the receptionist. "Never mind then," he added hastily in a voice like velvet. "I can see that's impossible. Thank you very much for your help." He turned on his heel without another look at me and disappeared out the door. I went meekly to the desk, my face white for once instead of red, and handed her the signed slip. "Well, how was your first day?" the receptionist said maternally. "Fine," I lied. "By God, Bella, we are going to have a journey here." My voice weak. She didn't look convinced. When I got to the truck, it was almost the last car in the lot. It seemed like a haven. Already the closest thing to home I had in this green, damp hole. I sat inside for a while, just staring out of the windshield blankly. But soon I was cold enough to need the heater, so I turned the key and the engine roared to life. And the engine roared to life. I headed back to Charlie's house, fighting tears the whole way. This is an Audible production. The end of chapter 1. Wow. So what have we learned? I have learned that this is a bigger task than I've thought. And I've also learned Stephanie Meyer she throws some great vocab around when she needs to. And the foreshadowing is so on the nose that it actually hurts. I assume the next chapter is going to be the car crash. And then he looks like absurd, and then he's just really handsome all the way through it. I think we're just going to be told that he's like really handsome, and that's it. Like continually, he's just like he's a bit moody, but he's really fit, and that's it. That was chapter 1. Thank you ever so much. Thank you for the people who sent super chats and super stickers. That really does mean a difference, and help me support me reading Twilight, the book that everyone needs to read. I'm so stupid. This is just like the